Hello, everyone. Welcome to GBC Live. Yeah, I kind of forgot what this thing is that we do Tuesdays. I know November was a very thin month. We were very busy, a lot of things going on. Let me just take care of some housekeeping as we just hit the live button and people are filing in. First of all, today is a Tuesday. It's Giving Tuesday. And we definitely appreciate your support here on Patreon or those other buttons that help us out. But also, if you just go to the link right below, we've got a list of a number of organizations across the state. There's the California Mountain Biking Association that's kind of like an umbrella group, but there's a lot of local groups. I know this past weekend, Vic and I, we were over on Thanksgiving in Sycamore Canyon. We saw these cool signs that Corba had set up. They do fantastic work here in the Los Angeles area. There's Low Lifes, Mount Wilson Bicycling Association. So $5, $10, but if you can chip in, I know they'll be happy you're thinking about them. Another thing, we are 11 days 11 days away from our next and last Send It. We're going back to Maverick Cycles in Whittier. We had a fantastic ride last time, about 30 miles. Nolan from the Bike Sauce will be there, a number of other luminaries. And also there will be food set up afterwards. Not too sure if it's the hamburger people or the burrito. We'll update that as press time gets closer. Other than that, we've got a lot to talk about and maybe some information to distribute. So let's bring on our esteemed guests in Troy and Vic. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
How's everyone doing tonight?
Wonderful.
Is there a little pushback here with the vertical angle instead of the wideness to show the backgrounds more, or are we okay with this?
I'm good with this.
I feel like it's a little bit more personal when we're in this direction.
Very personal. I should have shaved.
So, first of all, really quickly, if you're on Facebook, try and go down to YouTube because you've got questions. We can answer them along the way. I know that 2025 is right around the corner. A lot of great events. You should start thinking about signing up for them. First thing I kind of, like, we're family people. We're all dads. And we spend a lot of time talking about tire pressure. Don't we?
Far too much time in the car the other day, sitting in front of your house.
It was interesting. It was getting kind of late, and people were walking by and flashing us there. Yeah, it was interesting, and I think part of it comes, and we'll kind of like walk back this tale that Vic, Bill, and I were thinking about doing White Mountain, and so they were going to do it on mountain bikes. I figured this is Gravel Bike California, so I was going to do gravel bike. And so I went with the 55s right before Mammoth Tough, which was a great happy accident because it was perfect for that surface. But then I was finding out, these really fat tires aren't really holding me back too much. And then we talked a little bit more about tire pressure, and it doesn't feel right when you take less air out. Because I was running probably in the low 30s, and then I listened to you and I went to my SRAM calculator, and instead I should be my kind of like mid to low 20s on those 55s. And I'm gonna have to find the mute button a few times tonight. It didn't quite feel like that was, it doesn't necessarily make you feel faster, but the numbers kind of show. So, Troy and I were talking a lot about tire width and how that doesn't matter as much as getting your tire pressure correctly. So, would you like to expand on that?
I mean, tire size, I think, does matter, but it doesn't matter if you're going to run the wrong pressure. Meaning that if you've got a 55, which is essentially, I think it's even larger than a 2.1, which was on mountain bikes for, decades. If you have that large tire and then you run, 50 PSI in it, then you're not taking advantage of that larger contact patch. You're essentially sitting on a very, very narrow section of that tire for most of your ride. And only if you're in something really soft, will you start to contact the rest of that tire. So to gain the full advantage, you have to adapt your tire pressure to your tire size. So as you increase volume, you want to decrease the tire pressure, and not just random, but as I pointed out to you, I think there's lots of companies that make some sort of tire pressure calculator. Some are, I would say, a little better than others. I prefer the SRAM one just because it seems very, at least for on the gravel bike and on the mountain bike, but mostly on the gravel and the road bike, it seems to be fairly accurate. And that's a good starting point. It doesn't mean that if it says, your pressure should be 31, that it's hard set at 31. 31 is a good starting point. And then you can go up or down from there, depending on your ride style, whether you've got a lot of weight in the front, a lot of weight in the back. If your stem's real high, you might not need as much tire pressure in the front as you do in the rear. So it's just a good starting point. But as you go up in volume, you should also remember that your tire pressure, the PSI, like 1 PSI is a big difference on a large tire, but on a narrow road tire, 1 PSI isn't going to make that much of a difference. So just remembering that, like, cyclocross racing and mountain bike racing, they're playing with like half a PSI. So having a pump that is suited for your range is also key. Meaning, when I'm pumping up my mountain bike, I have a mountain bike pump, and it only goes to 40 PSI. Like, that's the max on the pump. And so you can really narrow it down to 1 or 2 PSI, even a half of a PSI, just to fine tune. And then to digress further, we can talk about pumps later, which we also talked about.
I have 2 questions, and one is a pump. We can get to that later, but I use the SRAM Tire Pressure Whiz app on my phone. I've had it for years, but I still have some older bikes that I still run tubes on, and I was wondering if, the pressure is like for a road bike, like I used to run 120, old school. Now I run lower pressures, but I don't run necessarily the pressure that the app tells me, because I think a tube still needs slightly more pressure so you don't pinch flat. Is that true?
A tube reduces your volume, right? And so a 2.1 with a tube is different than a 2.1 on a hook or a hookless rim. Now, with that said, the consequences of running too low on a tube are different. They're similar, but they are different in meaning that you can pinch flat a tube much easier. You can pinch flat a tubeless tire. Trust me, I did it like last week on my mountain bike. But it is much more difficult. So I would say yes, a tube needs a little more pressure. Most of that is going to be because of the volume change. It's not a lot, but it's a little bit. But it's also ride style. I run historically on my mountain bike probably 1 to 2 PSI higher than what it suggests. And that's mostly just because I tend to have tires not like the way that I ride bikes. So yes, as you said, but old road bikes used very, very, very low volume tires. And when you had a tube inside of that, it's even lower volume. So that is the reason you needed 100 or 120 psi. It was because, you're essentially on such small amount of air volume that's the pressure you need to support the rider weight. As you go up, even with a tube, you drop psi. So just because you're on a tube doesn't mean you have to be super high on pressure. But it's going to depend on the volume of the tire. If you're on a, let's say a 28 millimeter road tire and you've got a tube, it's probably going to be 2 or 3 psi higher.
Okay.
But if you're on a mountain bike, it might only be 1 psi higher. So, and I think that's where some of that disconnect comes from, is that mountain bike tubeless has been around for a very long time. We've run kind of the same pressure that we run on tubeless as we did in tube. And that's because the volume between the tube and the tubeless is pretty close when you're talking about that size of a tire. And so the pressure, 1 psi, is a big difference, but it doesn't seem like much when you're comparing it to the smaller volume tires that have now converted to tubeless, which is like the road bikes and gravel bikes.
Okay, so the second question, and like I said, this, you might want to go to this later because you already said that, but I just got a digital pump, and I'm not sure how much I trust it because it fluctuates and then it kind of settles in. It's a Silka. It's like, supposed to be really, really good, but what's your take on digital pumps?
The other thing that Zach and I talked about, also in depth the other day, was essentially every pump. I can almost guarantee you every pump that you have is different and wrong.
Yep. So I'm trying to see. I used my compressor with the part tool.
Yep.
I was just using that as a baseline, not thinking that one's 100%, but just to see how close it was, and it's pretty close. It was like a pound.
Yeah, and they're all
a lot. Like you said, it depends on the tire.
They're all pretty close.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing to remember is that 23 psi for you on your pump is 23 psi for you, right? And that's what's right for you. And so that's where having that starting point and then going up or down, some of that up and down is for ride style. Some of that is just the equipment you have. Maybe your pump is a little further off than another pump or whatever it is. But if you use a different pump, then you probably won't get the exact same pressure. And so that's where, I don't know, it was a few years ago now, but when those the Tire Whiz came out, I really loved it, because then the pressure that is on that little digital valve is the pressure for that tire. And I know that it's always the same. I don't have to look at my pump. I can just look at the pressure that's coming out of that Tire Whiz valve, and that's the pressure I'm going to use. As far as digital pumps go, I think they work great. I really like them, but I also hate them at the same time, mostly because every time I need to use one, the battery is dead.
Oh, okay.
And I have a digital shock pump for my mountain bike, and it's to change the battery in it. It's like 4 bolts, and you got to pull it out, and then you got to change the coin cell, and then you put it all back together, and then I use it. And then the next time I need it, I got to do it all over again because the battery is dead by then. So there's a love-hate relationship with those. I think if it's a pump you're using every day, it's definitely worth it. But that's my 2 cents on the digital pump. I like them. I like the Tire Whiz more. And if it was up to me, I'd just put a Tire Whiz on every single wheel I had and have live tire pressure and be able to set, what it is for that bike and set your own little range and be done with it. So it wouldn't matter which pump you're at. You could have a little tiny hand pump. You could have a CO2. You could do whatever you want.
Right.
Quickly, we have a question here. I think you can answer this, Vic. I know Troy can't answer this. I mean, Troy's definitely been a member of the cycling community for a very long time. I don't know if you had mentioned the publications that you've written for and still do and consult. So definitely here.
I worked for High Torque Publications for a long time, and I still am writing some articles for them. I have one I think due tomorrow. Don't tell Ron that it's not ready. And I also worked at Velo for a short period and a couple of other publications, but essentially I like to write articles about tech and bicycle stuff. And it's fun, but I think you can trust me. I just tell you what I have experienced from the garage and full of stuff that I have and experiences that I get with them as someone who just rides bikes to ride bikes, not to promote a single brand or to promote anything. I just tell you how it is and if I would run it and if I wouldn't. I got a text message this morning asking me if I would ride a specific bike, and I gave my honest opinion from my experiences. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's my opinion, and I think that some things are dumber than others, but
well, I mean, I think one thing I've learned from having this Lauf, now it's been almost exactly a year, but how, I probably took me 2-3 months to get 90% understanding it, and then kind of along the way, and being able in the world of tech and so many products coming by to try and understand trends and pretty much you've been on top of the curve and been pretty spot on a lot of things. I remember the Niner MCR, which I know is no longer with us, but I
have one.
I know the people that own them. It's people love them. It's like that Honda electric car that you still see around from the 80s. But it's that's been a fantastic bike. The Lauf, I think, is a great bike for 98% of the people out there. I think a certain type may not like it, but that I'm learning now, you're not going to find the one perfect bike that fits every single need. But the bike,
no fun anyway. You want more than one bike.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Troy?
Yeah.
I have a garage full.
I know. I got to catch up.
Yeah, and I think, to that point is that every single person has their own ride style and their own personal kind of the way that they see a bike. Like some people think the Lauf is ugly, which there are a few Laufs that I would not disagree with. I mean, they are not the most, pleasant on the eyes. But when it comes to form and function, sometimes that can be more important depending on what your goal is with cycling. And one of the reasons I suggested it to you, Zach, was just because you carry around all those bags and all that stuff, and then sometimes you haven't, sometimes you don't, and having that suspension on the front that doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't matter how much weight is on it, but it's so progressive that it compensates for it without you having to manually go and change pressures or modify anything. It's really convenient. And that was one of the biggest reasons. Plus, they're just pretty bulletproof bikes. And I know that that's something that for a person who beats up on their bike enough needs. So the Niners are also super bulletproof, which you had for a long time. But I thought that from the way that you ride and that ride style and the weight and the way you carry a lot of stuff, that the Lauf was just could be a better fit, or a Lauf on the front of a Niner.
Well, it's interesting because so we talked a little beforehand. My friend who is considering getting a Lauf. The one thing that I mentioned was it doesn't, not set up for like putting a rack on the back, and so so I was just trying to think of myself like, what type of bike would kind of like fall into that range of like could kind of do everything, still be fast, but still can quickly morph into a commuter. I would definitely put the Niner up there and be a easy choice if it had. I think the max tire width right now is 45 or 47, and I think like 50. I think like now people should be asking 50 is the minimum clearance. And maybe the only other bike I would suggest is maybe the Jameis Renegade, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
The original gravel bike.
Yes, I know that one should be in the Gravel Hall of Fame, but definitely a lot of other bike companies came out with their own that caught their excitement.
To be honest, there's a lot of, we've talked about this also before, is that the difference between each bike is like 1%, right? Like all the bikes are on a pretty high level. It really comes down to, I think, whoever's buying a bike is to think about what they really need out of a bike, not what they want, because everyone wants to be fast and everyone wants to have the cool this and that, but at the end of the day, it's about staying safe, being comfortable, being able to ride it day after day after day. And for some people, durability's a big thing. For some people, so material is going to be a key component. For other people, it's going to just be style and the Instagram photos. And for other people, it's going to be, the stability at high speeds and, or in tight, depending on where you live, maybe you ride some really tight, single track or sharp turns or something. So I think for everyone, it's a little bit different, but being, like picking gravel bikes, not as many gravel bikes are going to come with rack mounts, right? Because that's not really the style. You can get like more of a touring bike, which rides on gravel, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to have that kind of fast race like geometry. It's going to be for day after day after day after day of long rides and being comfortable. So I think that there's a lot of options out there. And the great part is like Vic pointed out, is that you can pick a couple and fill up your garage, or you can really just nail it down to what's important to you, the most important, and go from there. For me, it's always a little bit of everything, but I only go uphill so I can go downhill. So I do like a bike that feels really good going downhill, and offers a lot of confidence. So that's always a key component for me, even though there's quite a few bikes that I really love, but are not the most stable going down.
Crux.
Exactly, like the Crux. Like I love the Crux. I've had a lot of fun on the Crux, but part of what makes it fun is that when you're going really fast downhill, you feel a little closer to being on the edge than I do when I'm on the Lauf at the same speed, on the same turn, on the whatever. So that can be, maybe for you, that's what you want. Maybe you don't want to go super fast, but you want to feel like you're on the edge. I don't know. but that's how, you know, a large category of bikes are designed. They're
But I
designed.
think that's what makes it difficult for people who are like Zach's friend. Like, he doesn't know what he wants. And there's so much confusion, not confusion, but there's so many choices.
There's so much marketing, so much BS.
There's marketing BS, but there's actual geometry and
Yeah.
stuff that's not BS that people just don't understand. They don't understand how rake affects the bike, or how a wheelbase affects the bike, or a high bottom bracket or a low. They don't know what slack means. They don't know. There's so many terms and things that people don't understand. So it gets overwhelming. So you have to kind of trust the marketing BS, because you really don't know what the hell you're listening to anyway.
Yep.
I mean, that's the reality of it.
It is. And like, I think, and that's one of the, you pointed out, probably one of the key things that I always tell people is that, like, high bottom bracket can be really good or it can be really bad. It just depends on your ride style.
Yeah.
If you want to pedal through tight turns and you're doing cyclocross style stuff and you're doing a lot of the slower speed stuff, a high bottom bracket's kind of nice, because you can continue pedaling through stuff that you can't on a lot of other gravel bikes. The downside is that transfers everything up. That moves body weight up, that moves your hips up, that moves everything up a lot higher. And so when you start getting on really steep climbs or really steep descents, you really start to feel it. And it can be hard to keep your front tire down, or it can be hard to keep your body weight from going over the front when you're going down something really steep.
You hit the eject button more often.
Yeah. And so then you have to start looking at things like dropper posts, and you have to look at, and then it becomes this whole deal. So I have two people I think of right away who love their high bottom bracket gravel bikes, and they absolutely shred on them, but they have them all set up so that they can transfer their body weight down when they need to. So,
but are they actual gravel bikes, or are they cross bikes they ride on gravel?
One of them is a custom built gravel bike that has a back end very similar to like a cross bike, and then the other one is kind of that like in between category, because cross is kind of, I don't want to say died, but it is not as popular as the gravel segment. So a lot of people are designing bikes that can do a little bit of both. So, but either way, I mean, historically, the Crux has been a cyclocross race bike, and it is super light now. It has a lot of advantages, but it still dabbles in that, CX world. So, if that's your type of riding, it's a super fun bike. I had one for probably 2 months, and it was really fun. It was really awesome. I also did go over the handlebars quite a few times.
That's my job.
Oh, which I have only done that once on my Lauf, because the Lauf is pretty low in comparison. It's a lot longer, a little more stable. So it's just a different experience, right? Like turning really tight on the Lauf is not not nearly like it is on the Crux or something like that. So when you do some of the single track stuff that I like to do, the Crux is a lot of fun, because you can just wind through stuff like an old 90s mountain bike. Because all of the mountain bikes are also doing the same thing. They're getting long, and they're getting slack, and they're getting all these key words that are making them different. Yeah.
Well, I want to bring up a little segment here, talking a little bit about holiday gifts. It can also be maybe we're just talking and our significant others are watching, and maybe if they're buying for the holidays.
I know mine's not watching.
Or, oh, I accidentally sent this clip. Don't watch it. Please don't watch it. But I it's at some point like trying to think of like gifts or things that I want like this time of year. I mean, obviously everybody wants a new bike. It's kind of hard to throw that underneath a tree. But like, I always think of like little tchotchkes and things to grab, and great gift ideas. Obviously clothing is great to have. I mean, I think I'm done with jerseys. I've got so many jerseys. They must be multiplying in the drawer because I can't stuff another one in there. But kind of like a little bit more of like the relaxed clothing I've kind of been into, and the or not stuff. I really like the I don't know if it's merino short sleeve t-shirts, but obviously you can wear them out, but they breathe really well. And that's kind of like one of the things. Like I really love their products. Not to mention they're made here in California, which is pretty cool. But do you guys have any like other like suggestions, or maybe if someone special seems to be listening, like you hope that maybe they hear your words?
Go ahead, Troy.
I would say my probably the thing that I use the most, I already have it, but I always suggest it to someone who's shopping for a gift, is the Feedback Pro Toolkit.
I was going to say tools. You stole my thunder.
Yeah, I mean the Feedback, I think it's called the Feedback Pro Toolkit. Maybe they have 2 names now, but it's essentially like this little case, and it comes with almost every tool that you would need to do like home maintenance on. There's a couple of little tools, and I know they've updated over the years and it's gotten, better, and there's more selection, but it's a little on the pricey side for a gift, unless it's someone that's really close to you, because I think it's $300 or $400. But it is, I mean, I have 2 of them. One lives in my truck and one lives in my camper, and I use it at least once or twice a week. And it's been a lifesaver on like, you go to go ride your bike someplace and you're like, oh, my whatever is loose. It just has all of the little knick-knack tools that you're like, does anyone have a chain breaker? Yeah, I have a chain breaker. Does anyone have like all these little tiny things that you're like, oh, that's perfect. That's what I needed. Also from Feedback, if you don't have one, they make probably my favorite little work stand, like the little bike stand. Also kind of on the expensive side. They've got a couple different tiers, but you don't need the like crazy heavy duty one unless you've got an e-bike. But those stands are awesome. They fold up, they retract down, so they get fairly small for what they are. I also like the Spur Cycles, like key. I don't have it on me, but the little key carabiner thing is super sweet. They make it in a couple different materials. Their bell. Trying to think of other little knickknacks that are super fun. If you've got someone who's at a SRAM bike, the SRAM now makes that SRAM Axis bike. SRAM makes that like 4 battery charger. Yeah, there's the bells.
I have the one on the left. They're great. I didn't know they came in all these colors.
Yeah, they got all kinds of colors and materials now. Oh, those bottles are kind of cute too.
Those are fun. I don't think I've ever used one though. It's too silly.
They've been around for years, but they're always, you can't have too many water bottles, so those are always good.
That's true.
Yeah.
One more thing from Feedback.
Oh, the Axis battery charger. They make an Axis like 4 or 5 battery charger.
I have that. It's a must.
It's so sweet.
It's so
if you have
great.
an Axis bike, that's like a easy gift.
Everything's hot. Yeah, that right there. Everything's hot. No, yeah.
No, that's the single one. That's the one that everyone's got.
Yeah, that one's
like 50.
You don't want that. Go up. I saw it, Zach. Go up. See the one with
yeah, right there.
That is
$100. Yeah, it's worth $100.
Worth every penny. I always have hot batteries, and it's great.
And a spare battery. If you're gonna buy a spare battery.
Yeah,
just a half.
Yeah. One more thing from feedback, they have the coolest little digital torque wrench, but it's also it's sold out.
Yes, they have a really cool one. There's another company called Presticycle.
Oh, I don't know that.
I don't think they have a digital version, but Presticycle has a bunch of just really. It's probably. I use their little tools all the time. And the reason I love them is they have like the interchangeable little bits.
Yeah.
So like they have like a 3-way that you can change and customize. So like mine has a Torx on it, and then it has a 4 and a 5 mil rather than having a 4, 5, 6. Stuff like that. But
these guys.
Yeah, Presticycles, they make just a bunch of really cool little useful tools where you're like, oh, I wish someone made this. And then you're like, oh, yeah, Presticycles makes it. But Presticycle used to help. Feedback had a little click type torque wrench in the past. And I think Presticycles is the one that helped them design it. So, and like that right there in the top corner, that little alloy CO2 pump, that changes your CO2 head into a hand pump, like a little pocket hand pump. So you could carry this in your CO2 head, and that would be like a mini pump rather than having to carry a separate pump.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's really cool.
Yep. And then, they got all kinds of, and that's the cool part. They're all really well priced so it's always a good gift ideas is something from here.
Oh, I'm going to make my list.
Yeah.
What else would be on your list, Vic?
Even though I quit drinking, I've always wanted that Campy wine, the bottle opener. But it's like so stupidly expensive. I never got one. Go to the Campy website, and they do this.
They make awesome 2 versions.
I think there's like 3 now.
Yeah.
They have a bronze one, a chrome one.
Then they have the one that comes in like the wooden box and the whole 9 yards.
It's posh. I think I still want one just because it's so ridiculous. You got to find it, Zach. It's a that. Yes.
There it is.
Oh no, 2,100. No, that's the gold.
That's the gold. That's the gold one.
There's one that's not that much money. That's just criminal.
That's true.
But they do have. They're like $500 or $400 or something. Where's the one that's not gold? There you go. There you go.
Titanium.
290 chrome titanium. Look at that. 290. That's actually less than I thought. I thought it was like $500. But I just think that's like, that's a gift. Because that's something I would never buy. But if someone gave me that, I'm like, yeah.
No, I can't hear you, Zach.
That would be something that 99% of your house guests would not appreciate. But that 1% that does,
one guy,
definitely
when Bill comes over, like, whoa, you have a Campy corkscrew. Yeah. So anyway, there you go. $2,150. Good Lord.
Okay. Do you have any feasible gifts that you have?
Well, 290 is not terrible. That was like the toolbox. Well, I mentioned the Feedback Sports thing that's not available.
Topeak makes a very, very nice digital torque wrench.
They do. Okay.
Yes. And I use it quite often. I have way too many torque wrenches. But I do like that one. So
how can you know, like I have 4, but I have 2 click style torque wrenches from, the Blue brand. And the big one I trust, but the little one just doesn't feel it just doesn't even feel accurate. Like
that one right on the left side that you can't quite see yet is the one I use all the time. Right there. The D-Torque DX is the one I use. Oh no, the DX is the larger one. I use the smaller one. Maybe the one next to it.
How much is that?
I don't know.
Find a store.
Well, add to cart.
Go to add to cart.
Add to cart. That looks nice because I don't trust my small one like at all. Like it just feels flimsy.
I like this one also because when you loosen a bolt, it will also tell you the torque.
Wow, so you know where you were. You have a baseline.
Well, kind of, to have proper torque, the bolt needs to be moving, and there's a lot of other things that I could get into when it comes to torquing bolts correctly. But I just like the fact that when you're loosening something, you can see like, oh, I was over whatever 7 Newton meters. No wonder why it was, stuck or slipping or whatever it might be. But don't want to digress too far, but to have proper torque, the bolt needs to be moving. So if you're torquing something and you stop too soon or something like that, you have to loosen it back up and then get it moving to get proper torque.
Okay, so I watch a lot of build videos and I notice some guys, including myself, when they get the click, we'll do it one more time. And then
the double click is okay, but it to have proper torque, the bolt has to be. It's called. I'm totally blanking on what it's called, but the bolt can't be stopped. If the bolt is stopped, there is, I think it's called like set friction or something that will make you over torque it if you try to go past it. So like if you're at whatever, let's say 4 Newton meters and you need to be at 5, you should loosen it and then get it moving and then stop at 5.
So the double click either will go past or do nothing.
The double click's not going to do anything because you have that static friction already.
Okay.
The double click it's not going to necessarily hurt it. But if you are trying to like inch your way up to a certain thing, you shouldn't inch your way up. You should just go all in one clean sweep and then stop.
Got it. All right.
Yep.
Torque wrench. Zach, that's what I want for Christmas.
All right. I keep on trying to add to cart, but it wouldn't.
I saw that. It didn't work.
I think it's like $80 or something if my memory serves me correctly. But
that's not terrible.
It's not terrible, and it's something that, in theory, we should all use all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
On another note, like, I don't have a air compressor. I've seen kind of like those pump air compressors.
The boost can.
Yeah. Do you have any? I know Nolan did something on it before. I think he mentioned the Topeak was his favorite. But do you have any suggestions on that?
I've used the Bontrager, a couple of versions of the Bontrager one. I've used the Specialized. I've used the Topeak. They all work fairly well. It really comes down to kind of usually what I don't like is the actual head that attaches to the valve. Is something that I'm not a fan of. I have liked the Bontrager little booster can thing. The only downside to those is that if you don't have everything set up and you hit the switch, it takes a while to repump the thing up. And, I think it's like $60 or $80 at Home Depot can get you a little tiny air compressor with a, small tank that can save you lots and lots and lots of pumping when it comes to tubeless.
Husky. I got my little Husky.
Yeah.
Although I do wish I got one with the dual tank. The tank is like the size of a fire extinguisher. And it runs out of air like instantly.
Well,
so
I have one of those as well. and
Yeah.
I just bought. They make these little tanks that you can add to it.
Oh,
So you can have like multiple little tiny tanks, and the upside to that is then you can carry it over to your car, or carry it over to something, and air something else up without having to unplug it.
oh, well, yeah. I was gonna say I carry it over to the car, but I unplug it.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Huh. I didn't know that. That's good to know.
yeah. So if you just, it's kind of similar to, bike tires. You're just increasing the volume, the storage volume,
Yeah.
without having to change the actual pump part.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, if you use tubeless, I would say a nice Via Air
Mm-hmm.
makes a couple of good little mini type air compressors. Not too many that have a tank, but it can be nice to, if you're just want something really small and non-intrusive. It can be nice.
Viair just
Yeah.
Viair is the company. When you see cars with air suspension, they usually have Viair pumps.
Yep. Yeah, they historically have been kind of big on the off-road industry and everything, but a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, they started hitting the cycling mountain bike segment pretty hard. So they came out with a couple products that are more specific to cycling.
I want one for my van.
They make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Get you an air horn.
That one more thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up here because I think we probably go long on every segment. But, well, Troy, Vic, thanks for joining in this holiday season. I know.
Oh, I have one more. Sorry.
Oh.
Subscriptions. You could do like a Zwift subscription or a Strava subscription or something like those. Are always good gifts because most of us pay for those anyways. So if someone pays the $50 or the $40 or whatever it is a year, it's kind of a good little like reminder every time you get on there that whoever got that for you.
Yeah, that's good for Zach because he's been on Strava for 20 years and he's still not on premium.
I've got the biggest cycling gravel club in California, and they won't give me anything. So
you're not emailing the right people.
I guess not.
All about connections.
So
yeah,
quickly, maybe as an idea, like last year, I would just get Peacock just for the Tour de France and then cancel it. And then I think it was like $5.99, $6.99 a month, fine. But then it was $9.99 for the year. So it's like, cool. So like right now I figured, it would go way up, and I think it's like $80 a year. Right now they've got like a Black Friday thing that's $19.99 a year. And so I was like, I should jump on that. I went ahead and they're like, oh no, sorry, you still have a plan. You can't add that. So I'm
use your wife's email.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking I was going to do, is go ahead and just subscribe somewhere else, because I
just make a new email.
Should I roll the die and just hope they have another promotion in the middle of the year when it's not wanted? But yeah, it's getting cycling on TV or anywhere is just so hard that I can't miss the Tour de France. So considering I watch that every day for 3 weeks, the amount of entertainment, it's definitely a few dollars a day.
There you go.
Yeah,
those are always good gift ideas. There's quite a few platforms that some of us use. I like Komoot as well. Komoot's a good, nice mapping system that I use. So ride with GPS.
There's a ride with GPS promotion.
Exactly.
Now, if you sign up, I think we've got on our webpage, but we get a little kickback and
or just gift cards. Just gift cards from your local bike shop that you can go buy, chamois cream or tubeless sealant or whatever you need replenished. Or sometimes it's nice some of the bike shops have like an account, and you can just have the money saved on there. So if you're really really hurting on a bike ride, you can swing by and your account's got some cash on it. That's always convenient. So pick up a snack.
Great idea. All right. Well, this should be enough for everyone. I imagine I'm going to have to buy a whole new house for all these extra gifts I'll be getting now. So thank you, Troy, Vic, for joining, and everyone out there. If you're watching the replay, I'll be adding links too. All right. Take care, everyone.
Cheers.
Yeah. Ta-da.